touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're here, hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe button. If you are a subscriber, turn on that notification. Hit that notification bell so you can turn on all of your notifications so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I'm going to be here each week breaking down the latest of Crimson Tide football recruiting news. And on today's episode of The Process, I want to talk about a couple of different things, including the Crimson Tide hiring 2 new young coaches, and I think that will impact their recruiting efforts. I will discuss how I feel it will impact it a little bit later in the show. I will also talk about the Crimson Tide offering a new 2022 prospect, as it looks as if they are not completely done with recruiting guys in the 2022 recruiting class. I will also take a look at a guy who got a new offer from the Crimson Tide recently, as Nick Saban and Alabama coaching staff is continuing to hit the recruiting trail really hard this week, hitting the road, checking out different schools, checking out different training facilities to get an opportunity to learn a little bit more about prospects and what they bring to the table on and off the field. Those are the things I will discuss, and we're going to start by talking about Peyton Kirkland, a 4-star offensive lineman out of Orlando, Florida, by the way of Dr. Phillips High School. He actually picked up an offer from the Crimson Tide on Wednesday. Kirkland currently stands at 6'7", weighs 325 pounds. He's a massive prospect with a massive offer list. He has an offer list that includes more than 50 D1 programs at the moment. He actually has a top school list, but I think his recruitment is continuing to move forward. He's adding new offers. I think he will eventually tweak that top school list in the future, and I think the Crimson Tide will have an opportunity to work their way farther up the board in his recruitment, with them already having offers from some of the top schools in the nation already. But he did tell me that he was grateful to have an offer from Alabama, grateful to have them as an option moving forward. He said he would definitely consider them. He is looking at possibly making a visit to the University of Alabama in the near future. He did visit Alabama in November for an unofficial visit during a game day, but he did not get an offer during a visit, of course, but did get an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the campus, enjoy the game day atmosphere, spent some one-on-one time with Nick Saban, and the Crimson Tide eventually offered him on Wednesday. Like I said, he stands at 6'7", weighs 325 pounds, a very strong offensive lineman. I think his natural position will be tackle at the next level. Not the most agile and athletic offensive lineman, but I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he's going to be one of the most highly sought after prospects in this 2023 recruiting class moving forward. And the Crimson Tide have thrown the hat in the ring for this impressive 6'7", 325 pound prospect. Like I said at the top of the show, the Crimson Tide did hire 2 new young coaches, and I think this will have a positive impact on their recruiting efforts, starting with them hiring Miami's defensive backs coach Travarius Robinson. I think this is going to be a significant hire for the Crimson Tide because he is a guy who has some ties to the state of Alabama, with him being a former Auburn defensive back. It's kind of crazy that a player who played under Tommy Tuberville is now a coach in the coaching ranks, and he's headed back to coach at Alabama football and be the Crimson Tide's cornerbacks coach moving forward. But just taking a look back at Travarius Robinson's impressive recruiting track record, it's one of the more impressive track records that you're going to find out of any coach available at that defensive back position who the Crimson Tide could have possibly hired. Just taking a look at some of the guys who Travarius Robinson was able to recruit at his different stops, including at Florida, including at Auburn, and also at his stop with the South Carolina Gamecocks, where he was the defensive coordinator and the defensive backs coach. He was able to recruit guys like Vernon Hargraves during his time in Florida. Also recruit guys like Jalen Tabor. Both of those guys were 5-star recruits. When he went to Auburn, he was able to recruit Carlton Davis to the Auburn Tigers. Of course, Davis plays on Sundays now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is a Super Bowl champion right now. You also take a look at when he went to the South Carolina Gamecocks, where he did not have an opportunity to have as many advantages in terms of recruiting against some of the top Power 5 programs. He was able to help South Carolina recruit guys like Jordan Birch, a 5-star defensive lineman. Of course, he is a product of Columbia, South Carolina, so it may was a bit easier, but he did get an opportunity to make sure that Jordan Birch was going to be in South Carolina in the future, with programs all across the country trying to get him, especially Clemson, with them being a school inside the state. He was able to help the Gamecocks secure a commitment and a signature from Jordan Birch, who had a pretty interesting recruitment. He also helped recruit J.C. Horn, who was a first-round draft pick in last year's NFL draft. So he has helped the schools that he has been at recruit some top tier prospects, and has helped those guys develop into first round draft picks in certain situations. Because when you take a look at Horn and Hargraves, both of those guys were NFL first round draft picks. So Travarius Robinson has a very impressive recruiting track record, and I think he has an opportunity to do some real damage on the recruiting trail for the Crimson Tide in the future, especially in South Florida, because he is a product of Miami, Florida. He grew up in the area, and I think he will have an opportunity to really dive into his roots and recruit that area really well for the Crimson Tide. Alabama has done a great job of recruiting the area in the past. Adding another heavyweight to their team will only help them in the future, as they will try to go into Florida and pull a lot of prospects in the 2023 recruiting class and classes moving forward. But the Crimson Tide also hired another coach in Coleman Hutzler. This was a bit of an interesting hire because he's going to be the Crimson Tide's special teams coach, and he's also expected to be listed as an outside linebacker coach as well. For those of you who may know, I think most Alabama fans do know, Sal Sinceri is the Crimson Tide's outside linebacker coach. It will be interesting to see how that works out with Coleman Hutzler expected to be hired as an outside linebacker coach as well. It'll be interesting to see how that dynamic will work out. But he's also going to be listed as the Crimson Tide special teams coach. The Crimson Tide special teams coach from last year, Drew Stravoda, will focus on tight ends. It looks like in the future he will shift all of his focus to the tight end position. Last year he coached the Crimson Tide special teams in the tight end position. Looks as if he's going to exclusively focus on the tight end position for Drew Stravoda next season. And the Crimson Tide will hand over their special team coaching duties to Coleman Hutzler. Crimson Tide want him to recruit moving forward, as well as his duties at that outside linebacker position with Sal Sinceri expected to be in Tuscaloosa in the future. But as I said at the top of the show, the Crimson Tide are not done recruiting 2022 prospects, it seems, as they recently offered a 2022 three-star tight end out of Louisiana, and Danny Lewis Jr., who currently stands 6'5", weighs 240 pounds. When you look at Danny Lewis's film, there's a lot to like. He's a very physical prospect, knows how to use his thick frame to his advantage. He can catch the football in traffic, pick up yards after the catch. A guy who's hard to get down. He's seen on his film just running over defenders. He's going to be a deep field threat. So he's a guy who Alabama is going to go after in this 2022 recruiting cycle to possibly add some depth to their tight end position. They signed two prospects in the 2022 recruiting class who are expected to play tight end at the next level already, in Amari Black and Elijah Brown. But the Crimson Tide did have a commitment from Jaleel Skinner earlier on in this recruiting cycle, and it looks as if that was the icing on the cake, in my opinion. I felt that they were in a good position with Elijah Brown and Amari Black at the tight end position, but with them losing Jaleel Billingsley to the transfer portal, it looks like the Crimson Tide want to make sure that they have some depth at that tight end position on next season. I think that is why they are looking at a guy like Danny Lewis, and his recruitment is going to be really interesting heading into National Signing Day, the second signing day of the 2022 recruiting cycle in February, with the Crimson Tide extending an offer to him. LSU showing a lot of interest in him heading into the National Signing Day as well, along with Florida. But the Crimson Tide will actually get Danny Lewis on campus this weekend for an official visit, so they will have an opportunity to try to come in late and swoop in and pick up another prospect from the state of Louisiana. Of course, they signed two of the top wide receivers from the state in the 2022 recruiting class already, in Shaz Preston and Aaron Anderson. They will try to go into the boot once again to pull in a very athletic guy who's making a rise here late in the 2022 recruiting cycle, and Danny Lewis Jr. will keep you updated on all of the things surrounding his recruitment moving forward, as the Crimson Tide looks as if they are not completely shutting the door on the 2022 recruiting cycle. cycle. But like I said at the top of the show, Nick Saban and Alabama's coaching staff have been hitting the recruiting trail hard this week, traveling all across the country to different states to check out different prospects who the Crimson Tide may or may not be interested in the future. They want to get an opportunity to learn a little bit more about these prospects from their coaches, possibly meet some of these guys as well. And Nick Saban has been visiting different states, including making several stops inside the state of Alabama, hitting up some of these more smaller schools. When he took a trip to Holland Home this week, had an opportunity to check out programs like Eufaula High School. So Saban and the Crimson Tide's coaching staff has been relentless on the recruiting trail this week. Some of the more important targets that they have seen or talked with their coaches this week, you have guys like 5-star running back Richard Young out of Lehigh Senior High School in Lehigh, Florida. The Crimson Tide's head coach Nick Saban had an opportunity to head out to Florida to check on Richard Young, who's going to be one of the Crimson Tide's top running back targets in the 2023 recruiting class. Also checking out guys like Elliott Washington and Venus High School in Florida as well. So Nick Saban has been hitting the recruiting trail in Montgomery, Alabama, checking out programs all over the country to see which prospects they will target in the future, and just taking a look at some of the guys who are going to visit Alabama this weekend. The Crimson Tide had an opportunity to see some of those guys coaching staffs and some of their coaches this week as well. So it's going to be a very interesting weekend in Tuscaloosa when it comes to guys visiting. Of course, when you take a look at this graphic, these are all guys we talked about on the last show who are expected to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend, but you can add Danny Lewis Jr. to that list as well. Crimson Tide will have an official visitor for the 2022 recruiting class, as they will not completely shut the door on the opportunity to add some more talent to their tight end position in the future. But that is what I want to talk about on today's show. Give you guys a quick update on the Crimson Tide offering a new prospect in the 2023 recruiting class, also offering a new 2022 prospect, trying to add depth to that tight end position, with them hiring 2 new young coaches in Travarius Robinson and also Coleman Hutzler. I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on what they could do on the recruiting trail. So the Crimson Tide's coaching staff will continue to try to hit the road this week to close out this week with a bang before they host some guys this weekend for those unofficial visits. But thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button below. Also be sure to leave a like. If you are a subscriber, hit that notification bell so you can turn on all of your notifications so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com, pick up your subscription today so you can be updated and notified on all Alabama content on our official site over at touchdownalabama.com. Then head to the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or to the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device, to download the Touchdown Alabama app. That way breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device by the staff here at Touchdown Alabama. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama.
Process.